During the Cold War, the American government was trying everything that it possibly could to combat the spread of communism. The American interest in Nicaragua began in 1979 following the overthrow of the American-supported Somoza dictatorship by the Sandinista National Liberation Front after decades of conflict. This overthrow led to the establishment of a socialist government in 1979, which led to the forming of a counter-revolutionary group known as the Contras, who began to violently challenge the socialist government. The word contra comes from the Spanish word which translates to counter-revolutionary. The Contras consisted of several groups, but the majority of its members were from the FDN, standing for the Nicaraguan Democratic Forces in English. While the Contras occasionally differed ideologically, the two main things that they had in common were A. their violent opposition to the Sandinista Liberation Front, and B. their financial supporters, mainly the United States and Honduras. The Contras engaged in the conflict for 8 years, from 1981 to 1989, when the United States ended their financial support for the Contras, at which point the Contras signed a series of peace agreements.
During this conflict, tensions grew in the United States between the Reagan administration and the Democratic-controlled Congress over the Contras, and as a result, Congress set a cap at $24 million for Contra funding. This changed in 1984, when Congress set a moratorium on all direct and indirect funding to the Contras from any American intelligence agency. During this time, the Contras looked for an alternative way to fund their revolution, while the Reagan administration looked for a covert network to aid them. In 1986, Senator John Kerry began to investigate reports of the Honduran arm of the Contras Army's involvement in gun running, drug trafficking, and terrorist activity. The report found that following tensions between the FDN and the ADRE and the CIA's threat to cut funding, the ADRE turned to drug trafficking. During Kerry's investigation, security officials arrested Adolfo Chamorro for the ADRE for aiding George Morales in the smuggling of cocaine in exchange for monetary support and an aircraft to be used by FRS pilots in Nicaragua. On August 8, 1996, the San Jose Mercury News published a 3-part series of articles entitled Dark Alliance, the story behind the crack explosion. The report found that the majority of the cocaine sold in south-central Los Angeles was provided to the Crips and Bloods street gang by a drug ring based in the San Francisco Bay Area, with ties to a Latin American guerrilla army. The first article reports on Ricky Donald Ross, who in the early 80s began peddling small amounts of cocaine, and over time grew to be one of the largest cocaine dealers in Southern California. The articles claim that Ross's drug empire was made possible by 2 men named Oscar Danilo Blandon and Norwin Meneses, who ties to the Fuerza Democratic Nicaraguanas, one of the groups compromising the Nicaraguan Contras. Blandon and Meneses reportedly sold large quantities of cocaine to Ross, who then converted it into crack cocaine and sold it in the black communities in south-central LA.
I am a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, and I worked South Central Los Angeles, and I will tell you, Director Deutschem, the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
The most troubling part of the story is the way in which the American government gives money to the Contras who then use that money to smuggle cocaine from Colombia to Los Angeles, at which point the American government gives more money to the police in order to stop people from using the exact same cocaine that was smuggled by the Contras when they were giving money to them previously.